Hi and welcome to another carpenter tutoring tutorial. I'm Amy and my job is to help you work smarter, not harder. And today we are going to be introducing the quadratic formula and giving a little bit of an overview of what that formula is and why we use it. So the quadratic formula is a formula we can rely on to help solve quadratic equations when some of our other methods don't work. It tends to be a little bit more complicated, so I often recommend reserving it for instances where another method doesn't work. But technically, you can use the quadratic formula on any quadratic equation in order to solve it. Now note that the quadratic formula will give you the solutions or the actual zeros. If you then need to work backwards and create the factors for whatever reason, you would have to move backwards from those zeros in order to do that. So the quadratic formula solves your equation. It does not factor your equation, although you can produce the factors from the solutions. In order to understand the variables that are used in the quadratic formula, we have to keep in mind the variables in the standard form of a quadratic equation. So a quadratic equation is typically written as ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a and b are both coefficients and c represents the constant. These variables are important to remember because they're the same variables that we use in order to complete the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula is the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So let's take a look at a situation with a real equation and see how we would plug it into the quadratic formula. All right, so if we had an equation that was 3x squared minus 7x minus 5 equals 0, we would plug that into our quadratic formula as the opposite of our b term, which is -7. So remember, when you are taking the values of a, b, and c from that original equation, you have to bring the operations in front of them along with the numbers as their signs. So since subtraction happens in front of this 7x, I have to bring that subtraction along. So the opposite of -7 plus or minus the square root of -7 squared minus 4 times the value of a times the value of c. And again, with c, I have subtraction in front of it, so I need to bring that along as a negative sign. And let me extend my square root here, need a little bit more room. All right, and then all of that is over 2 times the value of a, which is 3. All right, so from here, what I like to do and the way I like to handle these is to simplify the discriminant, which is the name for the part underneath the radical, first. So I'm actually going to bring this up to the side and work on it on its own. So I have the square root of -7 squared. Well, -7 times -7 is 49. Minus 4 times 3. 4 times 3 would take me to 12. And then 12 times -5 is -60. So this is minus -60. Well, 49 minus -60 is the same thing as 49 plus 60. And 49 plus 60, well, that's almost 50 plus 60. That would be 110. Then I have to take one away, so this is 109. In order to simplify this radical, then, I have to question if there are any perfect square factors of 109. As it turns out, 109 is a prime number, which means there aren't any factors of 109 besides 1 and 109. So we don't have any perfect square factors. There's nothing more that I can do to simplify this. All right, so that means I can come back to my total quadratic formula now and rewrite this as -7 plus or minus the square root of 109 over 2 times 3. Now I can start to simplify the other parts of this expression. So -7 is just +7, plus or minus the square root of 109 over 2 times 3, which is 6. This would be considered complete. Now this does only look like one root, but we have to remember that this is actually giving us two solutions because we have a fork in the road right here. This is saying that you can create one root by doing 7 plus the square root of 109 divided by 6, and then you create your second root by doing 7 minus the square root of 109 over 6. So don't forget that that's where your two different roots come from, the fact that you do addition in one case and subtraction in the other. But thanks to the quadratic formula, we have now found the solutions of this equation, and in this case, there wouldn't have been any other method that we could use to find these. So quadratic formula saved the day. Well, as always, I hope that this video was helpful. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. Please let me know in the comments if there are any other topics you'd like me to cover, and otherwise, I'll catch you next time.